Hey everyone, welcome back to another feed review. In this video, we'll look into customs duties with one of your favorite actors' experience and a new form of entry fees. Let's get into the first story. I'm absolutely not going to do an impression, so if you're looking forward to that, I'm sorry. Arnold was held in Munich airport on January 17th, but held's, a kind of a strong word, because as it turns out, he was just stuck there until the customs officials brought a machine to let him pay the tax. And what was the tax? Well, it was reported to be this: the EU Customs Cash Control Regulation. Regulation 2018-1672 of the European Parliament and of the Council. We'll look a little bit more into this in a second. The article went on to retell the report of the situation. How Arnold was transporting a custom-made luxury watch, which the article notes that timepieces by the same watchmaker can sell for hundreds of thousands of dollars for a fundraising auction. Later on, it states that the starting bid was 50,000 euros. Now, on that point of the starting bid of the watch, the article makes mention of the EU rule, which states that any cash or certain valuable items over 10,000 euros need to be declared. Taking a closer look at the regulation, we could see that 1. They include in their definition of cash commodities that can be used as highly liquid stores of value, which give rise to a high ratio between their value and their volume, while incurring only modest transaction costs. So we can immediately think of a luxury watch, which is a small item. Just look at the box he's holding. That can go for up to and past hundreds of thousands of dollars, whatever currency you value it by. I wouldn't know because I haven't bought one myself. This basically brings those luxury watches entering the European Union under the scope of the obligation. This obligation is that the carrier, defined as a person entering or leaving the Union during transport, needs to report these cash units once they cross a value of 10,000 euros. The law then enables customs authorities to report and control the goods, and the disclosure is done through the forms they developed, which the news reports Arnold was not asked to fill out, leading to the whole point of the whole delay. So let's see the law up to this point. A. EU Customs requires a filing of cash amounts entering the Union over 10,000 euros. B. Cash amounts include highly valued low-volume commodities such as luxury watches. C. Failure to file for the amount triggers the powers of competent authorities. Bringing it all together, seeing how it all works. Arnold was carrying a good valued at over 10,000 euros, was supposed to declare it, but didn't because he was reportedly not asked to, triggering the powers of competent authorities, the customs agents, to hold him there until he could sort everything out. In this instance in Munich, Arnold was subject to control by customs agents asking him to pay the tax. So here we could see customs controls and tax policy established and in effect in the form of a customs duty or a charge levied on goods crossing international borders. So these customs duties are usually levied to protect the competitiveness of local goods or even as a capture of domestic wealth that may have been transferred abroad when a local purchased a highly valuable good and brought it back into the jurisdiction. Not only does it assist local businesses, customs duties and reporting requirements such as the ones Arnold was put through serve as important safeguards against money laundering, like all cash transaction reporting requirements. Of course, this whole situation seems to be a pretty good example of how a well-designed tax policy and well-designed anti-money laundering policy that is pretty convenient, considering all of the possible signs around the airport asking you to fill out the form if you got something to declare to do so. But it could fail if someone simply overlooked something by accident. On to our second story, the tourist tax. I'm sure we all love to travel. Where we travel to is of course a subjective choice based on what we're interested in seeing. Every year, of course, except for those 3 odd years where our lives were basically put on pause, hundreds of millions of people fly, ride, or drive to different places to engage in tourism, to areas ranging from environmental destinations to highly urbanized and even some controversially reasoned locations. Tourism, and basing a whole segment of your resources and economy around it, is of course an incredibly challenging balancing act between maintaining local interests and doing things for the sake of visitors and pandering to them. This article makes mention that places like Amsterdam and Athens have some anti-tourist fervor cooked up by locals because of the actions of a couple tourists. Okay, maybe not a couple. If we think about this word, over-tourism, that the author mentioned here, we could understand locals not wanting mass amounts of people crowding their already crowded cities, and the fatigue they'd feel after having to deal with it for so long. On the other hand, we could understand that development spurred by tourism can help elevate the standards of living within those areas and nations. Again, this is all a balancing act. A new weight on that scale is the so-called tourist tax. Going through this article, the author lists how tourist hotspots like Greece, Venice, Bali, Paris, and Amsterdam, among others, are introducing tourist tax policy, which is basically levied on foreigners. These taxes vary between a value-added tax and an entry tax. The value-added form of this tax seems to be emerging on how the tax comes in the form of a tacked-on fee to the accommodation and usage bills. So visitors checking into a hotel or using a campsite like in Iceland are charged either a flat fee or percentage markup. If you think about sales taxes in your home jurisdiction, this is a basic idea of such a value-added tax. But unlike the sales taxes, it's much easier to administer and govern as it's limited in scope and possibly, depending on jurisdiction, structure. Alternatively, the taxes may come in the form of an entry fee, like in Venice, which are arrival and departure fees charged during transit. The exact structure of how this fee is applied is through adding value, this time to tickets. So in the end, both of these are basically value-added tax, which mark up the price billed to visitors. None of it involves returns and no extra compliance. In the end, it seems as though traveling would just get a tad bit more expensive depending on the destination. And in theory, the local population should benefit from an increased tax revenue because these fees paid en masse would compound and add up. And those were the two stories for today. Again, let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Thank you.